Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And of course, we're back on a Monday morning with the weekly news segment brought to us by the amazing Nick Bendel. Hello, Nick.
Oh, amazing. I like that. Thank you, Owen. You're pretty good yourself.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Jeez. That's the best thing I've heard all day. um, Now, we've got a budget special weekly news. And it's our first ever budget special weekly news. So it's going to be a huge one, a big one. So looking forward to it. But before we get into that, what's been happening in your week besides the budget? I'm sure there's not too much else that's happened for you, but what else?
Well, you've challenged me to name something other than the budget, but I'm going to bring us right back to the budget because that was
Oh,
actually
okay, fine. Yeah, it's
that,
too exciting to not to pass over.
that was the highlight of my week. And for those who don't know, I'm the owner of Hunter and Scribe, which is a copywriting agency that writes content for finance and property businesses. And one of our financial advisor clients wanted to deliver a 6,000 word report to their clients on the day after the budget. So we had to write a 6,000 word report and 10 social media posts in the 12 hours between 8 p.m. when the budget goes live and 8 a.m. when the client arrived at work. And we actually delivered the 6,000 word report and 10 social media posts by 6:30 a.m. rather than 8 a.m. So delivered it with time to spare, and the client was very happy with the report, which was nice.
Fantastic, well done. And I hope you caught up on sleep the next night.
Well, it's funny. I went to bed at about 6:45 a.m. and determined to sleep for many, many hours, and I just had so much adrenaline pumping through my body from the budget that I just could not sleep for hours. So I actually didn't sleep very well. But now, 5 or 6 days later, I have fully caught up on my sleep.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, yeah, it wasn't as exciting for me this past week. I mean, it was a fairly underwhelming budget from my point of view. So it's yes, it sort of passed, and I just got on with the daily grind of looking after our clients who are property investors with our national property management business. But yeah, let's get into the news, Nick. It's and specifically about the budget. And what's the first thing for us to talk about?
Yeah, 3 budget stories today, Owen. One of them about the economy, 2 of them related to housing. Keen to get your thoughts. So, our first story today, budget position getting better, then worse. The Treasurer has projected that Australia will achieve a $9.3 billion surplus this financial year, following a $22.1 billion surplus last financial year, which would be the first back-to-back surpluses in almost 2 decades. However, it's all downhill from there, with the final 4 years of the forward estimates expected to deliver deficits of 28.3 billion, 42.8 billion, 26.7 billion, and 24.3 billion dollars. That will take the debt to GDP ratio from an expected 33.7% at the end of this financial year to 34.9% at the end of the 27-28 financial year. Oh, and the conventional wisdom is you run deficits during bad times and surpluses during good times. Some people say these are bad times due to high interest rates, high inflation, and slow economic growth, but others say these are actually good times due to very low unemployment. I'm keen to know, how would you assess our economic position, and should the government be running deficits or surpluses in this kind of economy?
Hmm. Good question, Nick. Um, Firstly, the no one can agree on whether interest rates are going to go up or down by the end of the year, um, or if at all any change by the end of the year. But somehow the government has this crystal ball that they can predict what deficit, the amount of the deficit will be for the next 4 years. So that's kind of interesting. But in terms of the current economy, yes, a lot of people are hurting. And so for a lot of people, it feels like it's hard times because of high interest rates, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis. There's a lot of crises happening at the moment, but at the same time, you know, there's high inflation for one reason. It's because there's a lot of spending in the economy and there's a lot of cash in the economy, which is what pushes prices up. And if we were really all hurting so much, then yeah, cafes, restaurants would all be going out of business. And I believe that some of them have noticed a downturn in business, but it's almost like we're consoling ourselves by still going out and treating ourselves to a restaurant meal or a cafe meal for our $8 coffees, and with the large latte caramel lattes is with double shots. So it's so are we really hurting enough to be able to actually change our spending habits? I'm absolutely sure there are people that are struggling, and but our employment is still good. Speaking to people though, there are there are a lot of people that are saying that they know someone that's just lost their job, or their company is doing a lot of redundancies at the moment. So there is a bit of trimming in the employment market, and I think that's where they're planning over the next, or they're foreseeing over the next 6 months or remainder of the year, that this will start to happen, and which will start to prompt those mortgage rate cuts and hopefully inflation coming down at the same time. So it's I think we're on the balancing beam at the moment, trying to work out which way we're trying to go. So I'm having a bet each way. Sorry, Nick.
Well, I think you've assessed the economy well, because it is that kind of economy. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Given the state of the economy, do you think we should be running surpluses or deficits at the moment?
Another good question, Nick. I don't think we should be running a deficit if just for the sake of it. It's definitely with the inflation issue. We should be trying to cut spending. The government should be trying to cut spending. That being said, I don't. I wouldn't like to be in their position at the moment, because it's difficult. They need to try and help cut living expenses. They need to try and boost more housing stock. And how do you boost more housing stock without pumping more money into the economy? It's there could have been ways that I was hoping to see in the budget, but we're a bit disappointed there. And so it's difficult. But that if I was to pick one or the other, definitely running a surplus at the moment.
Okay, then, and you mentioned the government should be spending less, and it's really hard to know where to cut, because there are people doing it tough and there are lots of different sectors that need money. If you were Prime Minister or Treasurer, where would you be making cuts?
Is there's it's not exactly cuts. I mean, probably there's a lot of fat government departments that could do with some cutting of staff, which would I mean, it's harsh way of doing it, but that would start to push unemployment up. That would certainly stop those people from spending money on $8 lattes, and and that could have a quick effect on the economy. But yeah, I reiterate that's a harsh way of trying to get that result. But there usually is always fat that can be trimmed in government departments. So that's one way that they can do it. In terms of other areas, I mean, they're already looking at being able to trim the NDIS part of the budget, which has just blown out of all proportion. Being in the property space and seeing all of the property marketers who are advertising, yes, invest in an NDIS property. I think it's just been taken for a ride now, and we as all taxpayers are paying for it. So that's one area that I'd like to be seen to cut back. We do need to offer those services to the people in need. But it's been taken advantage of, and hence the budget is just blown out for that area. In terms of other areas we could make savings, well, I think it's yeah, from my point of view, yeah, that might be above my pay grade for some of the other areas. I know the Medicare budget and the healthcare budget, as well as welfare, is always a huge part of the budget from a percentage of spending, and but that's not my area of expertise. Yeah, I'll leave that to someone else to make a decision on. But when it comes to the property market, yes, there could have been a lot of things that could have been done to help the property market put more supply into the market.
Well, our final two stories are going to cover the budget
Right.
in terms of housing. So
Yeah.
our second story is more builders on the way. A total of $90.6 million has been allocated to boost the number of skilled workers in the construction and housing sector and help the government meet its goal to facilitate the building of 1.2 million new homes in the 5 years from July 1, 2024. There will be 62.4 million for the states and territories to deliver an additional 15,000 fee-free TAFE and vocational and educational training places over 2 years from January 1, 2025. And there will also be $26.4 million to deliver 5,000 places in pre-apprenticeship programs over 2 years from January 1. The budget has also allocated $1.8 million to streamline skills assessments for around 1,900 potential migrants from countries with comparable qualifications who want to work in our construction housing sector, and prioritise the processing of around 2,600 Trades Recognition Australia skills assessments in targeted occupations. Keen as always to get your thoughts, Owen. Is the government right to try to increase the number of skilled workers in the construction and housing sector?
Short answer is yes. We definitely need more skilled workers in the construction and housing sector. That's unfortunately is part of a bigger problem of the over immigration stimulus that's happened. Oversupply of immigration, would that be more accurate? And so it's we do need to reduce that amount of immigration because we've got nowhere to house them. But if we're going to have a high level of immigration, then yes, let's get the right skilled workers coming in for now, and we definitely need them in the construction and housing sector.
Interesting. So the government is taking a two-track approach. They're trying to increase the number of locals who learn construction and housing trades while trying to increase the number of overseas workers who are able to work in Australia. Does that sound like the right approach to try to do both those things at once?
Yes, certainly. It's not an either or situation. It's and. Let's do both. And because we need to fix the long-term issue, and this issue it's been coming for decades. as a result of the Hawke Keating government in the 80s, pushing everyone to go through and finish your HSC through to year 12 and then go to university and get a HECSTAT. Yeah, that's a good idea for all of you. Even though most people don't end up using the degree they got at university, and they end up with this debt. But there was this big push away from people finishing school and going straight into a trade. And as a result, we now have plumbers and electricians earning more than lawyers and engineers, because we got a lack of supply of trades, and so prices have skyrocketed. There's that whole good old supply demand issue again, Nick. Yes, if you have we've got the highest paid trades in the world, which is great for them. I don't deny them being paid well. It's who wants to be down a sewer pipe? You couldn't pay me enough to do that. So, but the whole premise of getting a higher education, to go to university and get a good job, was so that it would provide more employment and income opportunities for people in the economy. But they forgot to make sure that we kept enough trades. So yes, there was an imbalance as a result.
Is there anything else you think the government should be doing to increase the number of skilled workers in the construction and housing sector?
Well, they need more work, and which means more demand for those workers. So we need to be able to encourage developers and builders to be able to get out there and start building more. But then we need to fix the supply chain issues. We need to be able to fix all the red tape, government red tape, to get all these developments approved, so that we can start building. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen this year. The government's target for, was it 500,000 properties being built in X number of years? That's not going to happen either. We're already behind the 8 ball, and with construction and building, and it's just a matter of fixing the long-term issue. But there's no sense of urgency to do whatever it takes to get that rolling as soon as possible.
Our final story today, government increases rent assistance. The government is providing $1.9 billion over 5 years to deliver another 10% increase in the maximum rates of Commonwealth rent assistance, which is given to lower income Australians. This new 10% increase builds on the 15% increase from September last year and will take the maximum rates over 40% higher than in May 2022, which is a combined result of indexation and the actions of the Albanese government. This is the first back-to-back increase in the maximum rates of Commonwealth rent assistance outside of indexation changes in 3 decades. For single parents or couples with 1 or 2 children, the maximum rate of rent assistance has increased by over $70 per fortnight since May 2022. Owen, do you support this latest increase to the rate of rent assistance?
Well, I don't disagree that it's needed. It's the level of increases in rent that we've seen in the last few years has just been extraordinary. And yes, people on lower incomes, I assume, and from our first-hand experience dealing with them as tenants within our business, yes, it's extraordinarily difficult for a lot of them. And it's something that needed to have been done, and I think we just needed to suck that part up, because otherwise we'd be dealing with them being homeless and having nowhere else to live and not being able to put food on the table. So even though I think the government should be doing more to fix the underlying issue, for a lot of these people who are struggling on the lower incomes, um, something in the short term had to be done. But I think it's making a bad situation worse in the long term.
That's interesting because this is all part of a bigger picture, as you're suggesting. As you mentioned, for people on low incomes, it's very hard to find affordable rental accommodation.
Mm.
So what is the solution? Should the government build more social housing? Should the government provide incentives for more property investors to enter the market? Should the government do something else? What are your thoughts?
All of the above. It's again, it's not um, an or situation. It's always and so social housing. You know, even though I don't like to say yes to that, it's there are ways of doing it better than it's been done in the past. We don't want to build ghettos, that's for sure. Um, and what's been done now by the government, giving money to charities to be able to help people by paying rent. We're seeing that on a daily basis too, not for low income earners, for people who do get behind in their rent and are unable to do it. Then there is assistance out there from charitable organisations. A lot of them are government funded. So that's already happening. So that's been done in the short term. Instead of the government building social housing itself, they can provide funding or finance assistance to particular developments to be able to provide lower housing solutions in different areas. They don't have to be uh, huge mass developments that do turn into ghettos. Even um, commercial unit blocks, large ones that have hundreds of units in them that might be targeted at or I should say that are not targeted at lower income earners. They can still turn into markets within themselves, and they can become a market within themselves because they're such huge developments and huge buildings, and they can turn into ghettos as well. I've seen it before. So even ones that are done purely for commercial purposes, they're not great either. So it's better planning all around, and governments can do a lot to be able to provide backing and finance to be able to get more of these done. In terms of the incentives for property investors to enter the market, I think we need to fix the supply issue first before any of that, and the government could also provide a lot of solutions in terms of cutting the costs of materials, cutting the costs to developers and builders to be able to build these properties and get more built at a cheaper cost, which can bring down the prices that are being offered to the market to buy these properties. So is that all of the stories we have from the budget this week, Nick?
Well, it is, Owen, but just maybe some final thoughts. What occurred to me as you were explaining how you think the government needs to act in this situation, you made the point, we want the government to provide rent assistance, we want the government to build social housing, we want the government to provide incentives for investors and developers, all of which cost money, which brings us back to the original question, I guess, which was, if we're going to run surpluses, where do we make cuts? It's very hard, and that's why we're probably best sticking to our day jobs rather than acting as treasurer.
Well, maybe. And I'm sure if I got elected and got into that treasury role, I would fully embrace it and hopefully make a positive difference to the economy and society. But I'll leave that for some time in the future if opportunities arise. But no aspirations at this point.
Well, not this week anyway, but when you do become treasurer, I reckon that's going to increase viewership for our videos and podcasts.
Oh yeah, we'll keep this going every Monday morning for sure. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, nice to chat again.
All right, you too, Nick, and we'll see you next week on the For the Property Investor podcast with the weekly news.
See you then.
See you, Nick.